Welcome back YouTube to another video. We're back tuning into the Upinshads today. I hope you guys are all having a good day. And we're going to tune into the Upinshads and talk a little bit about it. So first thing first, the selected passages from the Upinshads present a conscious yet profound exposition of core Vedantic philosophy, focusing on the nature of self, Atman, ultimate reality, Brahman, and the law of moral causation. Through the dialogue involving Nakitas, the text explains what happens to the soul after death, emphasizing that rebirth and embodiment are governed by one's deeds and knowledge, including the principle of cause and effect, karma. A central theme across the sections and this is the unity of existence. Although the self appears to take on many forms, it remains essentially one, indivisible, and all-pervading. The idea is clarified through vivid metaphors, fire and air entering different forms without losing their essential nature, and the sun remaining pure despite shining on impure objects. These analogies reinforce the claim that the true self is untouched by suffering, impurity, or physical limitation. The text ultimately asserts that Brahman is the external conscious reality underlying all change. Those who directly perceive this divine self within themselves attain internal bliss and peace, while others remain bound by ignorance. The recurring declaration this is that underscores the ineffable nature of ultimate truth, suggesting that true knowledge arises not from intellectual reasoning alone, but from direct inner realization. So you guys, we are going to get to the book now. I would pull it up on screen, you guys, but I just got my one camera on me right now today. So I'm going to read it off to my phone and then add the videos on screen later on when y'all watch. So here we start off with, O Gautama and Nikitas, I shall declare unto thee the secret of the eternal Brahman and what happens to the self after death. Some jivas, individual souls, enter wombs to be embodied. Others go into immovable forms according to their deeds and knowledge. This text shows the application of the law and cause and effect to all forms of life. The thoughts and actions of the present life determines the future birth and environment. The being who remains awake while all asleep, who grants all desires, that is pure, that is Brahman. That alone is said to be immortal, on that all the worlds rest. None goes beyond that. This verily is that. As fire, although one having entered the world becomes various according to what it burns, so does the Atman self. Within all living beings, though one becomes various according to what it enters, it also exists outside. As air, though one having entered the world becomes various according to what it enters, so does the Atman within all living beings. Though one becomes various according to what it enters, it also exists outside. By using these similes of fire and air, the teacher tries to show Nikita the subtle quality of the Great Self, who, although one in a formless life like air and fire, yet assumes different shapes according to the form in which it dwells. But being all-pervading and unlimited, it cannot be confined to these forms. Therefore, it is said that it also exists outside all forms. As the sun, the eye of the whole world, is not defiled by external impurities seen by the eye. Thus the one inner self of all living beings is not defiled by the misery of the world being outside it. The sun is called the eye of the world because it reveals all objects. As the sun may shine in the most impure object, yet remains uncontaminated by it. So the divine self within is not touched by the impurity or suffering of the physical form in which it dwells, the self being beyond all bodily limitations. There is one ruler, the self of all living beings, who makes the one form manifold. The wise who perceives him seated within their self, to them belongs eternal bliss, not to others. Eternal among the changing consciousness of the conscious, who though one fulfills the desires of many, the wise who perceive him seated within their self, to them belongs eternal peace, not to others. They, the wise, perceive the indescribable higher bliss, saying, "This is that. How am I to know it? Does it shine?" And that's where we stop this time. But to further break down what we just read, we're going to really get into it. So nature or Brahman. Brahman is presented as the ultimate eternal nature, or the eternal reality, pure, immortal, and all-pervading. Nothing exists beyond Brahman, and all words ultimately rest in it. Atman and Brahman unity. The individual self, Atman, is not separate from Brahman. Although it appears divided among living beings, it remains essential, one and indivisible. Karma and rebirth. The destiny of the soul and death is determined by actions and knowledge acquired in life. This reflects a universal law of cause and effect governing all forms of existence. Multiplicity without division. Through metaphors and all, the text explains how the one self appears as many without losing its essential unity or nature. Transcendence of suffering. The self remains unaffected by physical impurity, pain, or worldly misery, much like the sun that eliminates all things without being itself being defiled. Inner realization as liberation. External bliss and peace belong only to those who directly perceive the divine self within themselves. Intellectual knowledge alone is sufficient for liberation. Ineffability of ultimate reality. The phrase "this is that" emphasizes that Brahman cannot be fully described through language or conceptual thought, but must be realized experientially. Wisdom versus ignorance. The text draws a clear distinction between the wise who attain peace through realization and others who remain bound by chains, desire, and ignorance. To further break it down, the selected passages from the Upinshads articulate foundational principles of Vedantic metaphysics, particularly the nature of Atman, self, Brahman, ultimately reality, and the doctrine of karma. Through the instruction given to Nikitas, the text explains the post-modern desire of the soul, asserting the rebirth and embodiment are determined by one's actions and knowledge, thereby affirming a universal law of moral causation. The passage emphasizes the essential unity and immutability of the self, despite its apparent manifestation in diverse forms. The philosophical claims is illustrated through analogies such as air, fire, without though enhancing different objects remaining fundamentally unchanged. Similarly, the metaphors of the sun underscores the transcendence of the self, which remains uncanted by the impurities and suffering associated within the physical world around us. Ultimately, the text identifies Brahman as the eternal, conscious principle underlying all change, liberation, and lasting peace, and attributed to those who realize the inner self through direct perception rather than the conceptual understanding alone. The repeated affirmation, "this is that," reflects the Upinshads' insistence on the ineffability of ultimate reality and the necessity of experiential knowledge for spiritual liberation. But that's all we had this time for the Upinshads, you guys. I hope you guys learned something from this. This definitely was a good read today. I hope you guys really did learn something. If you didn't, go break it back down, put it on slow-mo, and see if you can read through all of my words itself, and see if you can gain through some of the knowledge. But this is about unlocking you and getting to the next stage in your life and being the next best person you can be. But peace out to all the ones watching, and all the people all your loved ones, peace to them. But y'all have a great one. Peace.